Hello and welcome to the News at 7, where we get to the heart of the day's stories and communities across Scotland. Tonight, the UK government announces a shake-up of asylum policy. More deportations, fewer illegal arrivals and a 20-year wait for settled status. But will it be enough to fix the system?
To the British public who foot the bill, the system feels out of control and unfair. It feels that way because it is.
We will break down the numbers in Scotland and bring you the main points also tonight. Alleged victims of rape will continue to get legal protection despite a Supreme Court ruling, says the Lord Advocate. So will those accused of rape get a fair trial? We will, of course, have all the sport as well with Paul. What's coming up tonight, Paul?
On the eve of Scotland's biggest game for a generation, a rallying cry from Scotland captain Andy Robertson to the Tartan Army as the World Cup beckons.
And I'll speak to a fan about his memories of the 1998 World Cup. Hello, I'm Amy Irons and welcome to the News at 7. It is the biggest shake-up of the asylum system in modern times. That's the claim from the Home Secretary. She's set out a major change in the rules, designed, she says, to deter people from trying to get into the UK. So what are the main points then? Asylum seekers, that's people who come here asking for protection from their home country and then permission to stay here, they'll have to wait 20 years rather than the current 5 before they can apply to settle permanently. In that time, those that have leave to remain granted and become refugees will have their status reviewed every 2.5 years rather than 5. They will have to return to their home countries if it's no longer deemed unsafe. The government would end multiple appeals against deportation, limiting them to just 1 per person. And the Home Office plans to ban visas on 3 African countries, which it says is not cooperating in taking back deported asylum seekers. Shabana Mahmood says the changes are necessary because the current system isn't working.
To the British public who foot the bill, the system feels out of control and unfair. It feels that way because it is. The pace and scale of change has destabilised communities. It is making our country a more divided place. There will never be a justification for the violence and racism of a minority. But if we fail to deal with this crisis, we will draw more people down a path that starts with anger and ends in hatred.
Well, we asked people in Inverness, where Cameron Barracks could soon be home to hundreds of asylum seekers, what they think about the government's new proposals.
I think it's only right, as long as it's not too harsh.
Especially in a place like Inverness, the hospitals at breaking point, and you can't get a doctor, surgery, a dentist. Immigrants is only exacerbating the situation.
I think we need more asylum seekers. I'm sorry, I may be in the minority, but Scotland needs a bigger population.
Abdul, a Syrian refugee, has been living on the Isle of Bute since 2020 and says it's now his home. In future, refugees like Abdul won't be given the same protection.
I feel like a newborn. I've got my fiancée. My fiancée is Scottish. And I've got a car, I play football here, I've got a friend. So to come back over there from zero again will be very, very hard. I don't know what to do at that point.
Let's now just have a look at some of the numbers then. As of June, there were 6,107 asylum seekers living in Scotland, up around a quarter in 3 years. There are more than 100,000 in the UK overall. Many, 3,844, are living in Glasgow. It houses more asylum seekers than any other city in the UK. Glasgow also has many refugees. Those are people who have had their temporary leave to remain granted, but the exact number is not counted and therefore unknown. So will these reforms help reduce these numbers, as the UK government hopes? Well, I asked Professor Sergi Pardos. He's an expert on immigration at the University of Glasgow. He's also part of the Migration Advisory Committee, which advises the UK government on immigration issues. Today, he'll be speaking to me in his personal capacity. I asked him to explain the new proposals.
I suppose there's 3 main areas. One of them is de facto to turn humanitarian migration into something temporary, or at least very, very difficult to get permanent settlement. Then a second related measure would be to overhaul humanitarian legal frameworks to try to make deportations easier. And related to that, probably there's going to be some bilateral agreements, or more than agreements, pressure, so to speak, to on third countries to try to, for them to accept deported migrants more easily.
In your opinion, what is driving the changes just now? Is it public attention and media attention? Why such significant changes to the asylum policy?
One policy objective behind it is basically to reduce numbers, to reduce immigration flows. The second one is basically to increase integration for those migrants or refugees that are in the country, to maximize social cohesion, to minimize conflict. And third, and last but not least, as they say, to try to gain the favor of public opinion. No? There's a bit of an inevitable political electoral motivation with the growth of Reform UK, etc. No? Now, for me, the question is, of course, what is going to be the effectiveness of these policy packages on each of these three policy aims? No? For example, the one on migration flows, is that going to be effective or not? Now, the government seems to be very much focused on stay conditions, making settlement more difficult, making migration more temporary, to fix an entry-level problem. No? And then there's a bit of a mismatch there. We don't have a huge amount of evidence coming from migration research that this actually works. So you can make sort of like the life of the refugee as difficult as you can, and maybe this will achieve other policy objectives, but not necessarily the migration flows or the return intentions. No?
How does this mean that the UK will compare to other countries? Some of the commentary has been that this will make the UK one of the strictest countries when it comes to an individual being granted asylum.
Well, that's probably true, actually. So the UK has followed for decades this principle of select and integrate. So when thinking about this combination between entry-level conditions and stay-level conditions, the policy has resembled the Anglo-American model, more like an Australian, Canadian, New Zealand, to some extent up until now American model, which is like relatively selective at the entry, but relatively inclusive, when the migrant is already in the country. No? A bit of a watermelon type of regime with a slightly harder surface, but a very inclusive inside. No? Now, the proposals that we are hearing signify quite a major policy shift about it. It's actually not clear that this combination fulfills lower immigration rates and more integration. Maybe it fulfills other policy objectives, but the trade-offs and the effectiveness long-term are things that need to be studied.
Yes, time will tell exactly what kind of effect the changes to the asylum policy will have. Professor Sergio Pargos, thank you very much for joining us in the studio.
Huge pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, last week, the UK's Supreme Court ruled that Scottish courts are risking the right to a fair trial in sex offence cases. Judges there took issue with the approach that courts in Scotland are taking to what evidence can be heard during those trials. Experts said it could trigger multiple legal claims to appeal convictions. But that sparked concern from some, including the mother of a woman who took her own life after she was forced to hold up her underwear during cross-examination in a rape trial back in 2002. Well, now the Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain KC says safeguards for alleged victims will remain firmly in place. Many victims groups warn that Scotland has a very low conviction rate for rape trials compared to other countries. According to Scottish Government figures then, the conviction rate for rape or attempted rape where there is a single charge was 25.5%. And in cases where there was more than one charge, that conviction rate does increase to 55.8%. That's compared to a conviction rate for all crimes and offences in Scotland, though, of 88%. So how do the courts now reconcile the ruling from the Supreme Court to ensure that a fair trial for the accused and protect alleged victims, as the Lord Advocate promises? Dr. Rachel Ferguson is a criminal law lecturer at the University of Glasgow, and she offered her insight into the latest developments.
In effect, the Supreme Court have suggested that the current rules in Scotland have been maintained in this case, but they were very critical of the potential for these rules to cause a miscarriage of justice, specifically a blanket ban on previous sexual activity or sexual activity that occurred after an alleged sexual offence from being admitted into court to prove whether or not a sexual offence occurred in the first place.
So is it right in saying then, Dr. Ferguson, that it's ultimately then up to individual judges in a case to decide what evidence they are going to permit to be used by the defence?
What they suggested was that a case-by-case basis should weigh up the use of bad character evidence for assisting truth, but also the balance between that probity, the assistance for truth, and the potential violation to the dignity and privacy of an individual complainer. It suggests that there will be consistency throughout cases, but there has to be a more open-minded, a more nuanced approach by the judiciary that will admit that previous sexual history or sexual history after an alleged sexual offence might assist with the decision as to whether a complainer is being truthful and reliable as to their allegation of that specific sexual offence.
So are alleged perpetrators getting fair trials, in your opinion, Dr. Ferguson?
In line with what the Supreme Court said, yes, but there is a potential in the way that the law has developed in the last 20 years in particular for unfair trials to have occurred. What the Supreme Court were keen to say is that in the cases that they were looking at, the use of the sexual history evidence that had been excluded and something called a disputed piece of evidence called collateral evidence about a false allegation of a past event. In those cases, they did not, the exclusion of that evidence did not undermine the fair trial. However, the reasoning that the judges relied on in Scotland made it possible that an unfair trial could occur. It's essentially a reckoning in this case. We've seen developments in the common law take place aside from the fact that legislation is present. So it's opened up a debate as to the constitutional propriety of judges creating law when legislation is in place.
That was Dr. Rachel Ferguson speaking to me earlier. Let's get a roundup now of the stories you can find on the BBC News app in Scotland today. And a Scottish woman who was one of 5 people killed in a car crash in Ireland was a diligent student who was always smiling, her college has said. Weather warnings for snow and ice are out as Scotland prepares for 4 days of disruption. Snow is expected for Grampian and the Highlands. And residents in Ardnamurchan who were left without power for 6 days after Storm Amy say they feel abandoned by energy distributor SSEN. Well, for more information on all of these stories, you can scan the QR code that's just going to pop up on your screen. There it is now, and it'll take you straight to the BBC Scotland News app. Well, Scottish stars of the big and small screen were out in force at the BAFTA Scotland Awards last night. Among those honoured include Ewan McGregor, who received an award for outstanding contribution to film and television, and he paid tribute to his uncle Dennis Lawson for inspiring his acting career. Fellow Scot James McArdle won Best Actor for his role in Four Mothers. Our reporter Pauline McLean was there, and I caught up with her earlier.
It was a really eclectic mix. You could tell by the kind of films and television that were in the mix. So you had like the indie film Falling, which won 2 awards on Falling. Jilly Cooper's Rivals, which featured David Tennant and Gary Lamont catching up with each other on the red carpet. And The Outrun, you'll remember that film was made in Orkney based on Amy Liptrott's memoir. It won 2 awards for Best Director and Best Actress for Saoirse Ronan, who wasn't there in person, but she gave her co-star Izuka Hoyle an acceptance speech to read for her. The Best Actor was in the room, James McArdle. He won for Four Mothers, which is another film that we covered on here, a gentle Irish film which had its premiere at the Glasgow Film Festival. Despite the fact he was in the room, he clearly wasn't expecting to win. He was quite taken aback to win the award.
You know, they're the people that inspired me to be an actor, like James and David and Ewan McGregor, who's getting this special award, and they, I just, truth's out, I just steal wee bits from them. Yeah. Sometimes. But like, I really look up to them, so to be nominated with them was such an honour, but also to win for this film in particular, I'm so proud. I loved the film with all my heart.
Oh, so proud, Pauline, and rightly so. And Ewan McGregor was also recognised last night with that Outstanding Contribution Award.
Absolutely, because he's had 2 awards before for Young Adam, also for Train Spotting, but this one was for his overall career, and he was there with the entire family. His mum and dad were there, his wife, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and Uncle Dennis Lawson, who presented the award to him. It was thanks to Dennis that Ewan, who left school at 16, became an actor. He actually got him his first job at Perth Rep, and he helped him audition for drama school, and then on to all the films that we know him. And more than 3 decades later, his life is coming full circle again, because he and his wife have just bought a house in Perthshire.
The location isn't the first thing that you think about when you're doing this kind of work. However, leaving home for lengths of time is, and the idea of having to, I'm 54, I've been doing this a long, long time, to the idea of like going away for 6 months or something on something is a big deal now, and it gets more of a big deal. So if I could just do it here, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, it's a good shout out in the right room to be in tonight.
There's a few people out there that might be able to make that happen. So,
and if you want to see the whole award ceremony in the comfort of your own home, in your own living room, there's a highlights programme on the BBC Scotland channel on Wednesday at 9 o'clock.
That was Polly McLean chatting to me earlier. Now, what is it like to prepare to give birth when you live on a remote island and your nearest hospital is 150 miles away? Well, Elle Duffy took over the bunkhouse on Rum with her husband moving up from Glasgow last year. Then they planned to have a baby. She sent us their story.
There's only 40 other people that live on this island, and this is the first baby for 5-6 years, so everyone is incredibly excited.
My name is Elle, I live on an island off the west coast of Scotland and I am pregnant. I moved to the Isle of Rum last year after visiting here just one time and just completely fell in love with the place. So myself and my husband moved over here, took over the bunkhouse and we've lived here ever since.
This place is so full of nature, it's so full of community. We just thought this is the place that we want to bring up a baby. I'm really excited as well, but I am nervous, scared. My nearest hospital is 150 miles away.
So this week was the week that we were due to leave the island for the mainland. We were due to leave the island on Wednesday, but on Monday we felt like something was a bit off. It was the baby. So I called my midwife and I explained to her how I was feeling, and she said, I think we need to get you off the island early. We need to get you off now. About an hour after I'd talked to the midwife, we were suddenly on the ferry getting ready for just the unknown.
Well, as you saw there, Callan Hutchinson was born on the 1st of November, just after midnight, weighing 7 pounds 6 ounces. He was delivered by emergency C-section at Raigmore Hospital in Inverness and spent a few days in the neonatal intensive care unit. 2 weeks later, he is home with his mum and dad, and we are wishing them all the very best. Still to come then, we will see how the weather is looking with Chris, and we speak to a member of the Tartan Army who has just about recovered, I think, following a dramatic weekend for Scotland in World Cup qualifying. And that's also what Paul is going to be all over in the sport tonight, I'm sure. Paul, Scotland just continuing to put us all through it.
Yeah, a real nerve jangler in Greece at the weekend, wasn't it, Amy? And it all comes down to this. Scotland have their World Cup fate in their own hands and can secure a spot at next summer's tournament with a win over Denmark at Hampden tomorrow.
We always thought when the draw was made that if we could get it down to the final game here at Hampden, that would be an achievement, because we would then have had to finish above our seeding. We've done that. We were drawn as a pot 3 team. We're already in second place. We want to go one step further and finish at the top of the group.
When you look through the whole squad, we've played in a lot of big games in terms of cup finals, league deciders, big games for Scotland, something that is exciting, and it's something to relish as well.
I think Denmark are a good side now that they know how to qualify for tournaments, so let's qualify for another one.
Well, this is how things look heading into that final Group C fixture. 3 points will guarantee Scotland a place at the World Cup for the first time since France '98, all those years ago. A draw or defeat means the playoffs in March. Earlier, I spoke to the former Scotland striker, Kevin Gallagher.
I'm nervous, optimistically nervous, excited by where we are, and we've given ourselves a massive opportunity with a little bit of luck and the help from Belarus. But, you work hard to get where you want to get to, and the lads have done it. They've made it hard again for us after the Greece match. But we're there. We've got a big cup final against Denmark, and basically winner takes all and gets there. The other one has to play extra games.
It's been a funny old campaign, hasn't it? Scotland, by their own admission, have been below par for much of the 5 games so far. But yet here we are on the eve of the game, 1 win at home in front of a sold-out Hampden, and Scotland are going to the World Cup. It's a funny old game, isn't it?
It's a weird one. You watch them and we watch with optimism, but isn't that what we always do with Scotland? In my days as well, we've done the exact same thing. It's there, and we've got a big opportunity, and it's there. It lies. You've got the Tartan Army behind you, full house. What more could you ask for the excitement? It's now just down to the lads can they keep the nerves and concentrate, because it's not going to be it's not going to be straightforward. But it's one of those games for me that it's a winnable match, and I think we can have a go at Denmark as Belarus did, and showed you that Denmark can leak goals.
You were part of the team, of course, Kevin, that got to the last World Cup in 1998. We remember those amazing pictures of the side walking out for that opening match against Brazil, but you also played a pivotal role in qualifying. I think 6 goals from yourself in the qualifiers. How do you look back on that period?
I look back very, very fondly. I didn't start the campaign. It was John McGinley, Duncan Shearer were getting opportunities in there, and then all of a sudden my form, Blackburn Rovers, hit the top, and basically I got started with Scotland, and all of a sudden I was getting goals, and it was like everything I seemed to touch for international football or for club football was in the back of the net. And my dream had come true, because I wanted to play against Brazil, a South American side, and I did it. It wasn't in the World Cup final, unfortunately, but playing Brazil in the opening game of the World Cup is probably second biggest supported game around the world, and to actually have been part in that, and a little part in probably the goal that we got as well, was something special, and it's something that I'll always take with me.
Well, I wonder if luck will fall on Scotland's side tomorrow. Finally, before I let you go, Kevin, are Scotland going to do the business against Denmark?
I hope so. I'll be up there, I'll be supporting the lads, and hopefully they can pay me back with this long journey that I'm coming up on, and give me the result that I'm looking for, and get rid of that 98 hoodoo now, and get to a World Cup.
Nice memories of France 98 there with Kevin Gallagher. As always, you'll find plenty more on the BBC Sports Scotland website, including news that Martin O'Neill will continue to take charge of Celtic on an interim basis. And we'll be live at Hampden tomorrow night ahead of the big match. Don't ask me to predict the score.
I was just
after that
drama
in Athens on Saturday. We could have been 5-3 down. We could have been 5-0 down, or we could have been 5-3 up at the end. I mean, it was just an absolutely ridiculous 90 minutes.
I know, it really was a game just that really put us through every single emotion. But we're very glad to still very much be in it at this point, Paul. Thanks very much. And staying with those World Cup hopes that we do have for some members of the Tartan Army, memories of France 1998 that Paul was just speaking to Kevin Gallagher about are still clear. I spoke to Jim Holland, who's followed Scotland for 45 years, and he told me the drama wasn't always on the pitch.
I had 2 tickets for the opening game against Brazil. My friend that I was going to be meeting lived in Hamburg. So I was flying the day before the game from Shetland, so there's always weather issues. So about 2 weeks before, I posted the ticket. When I met him in Paris the day before the game, he hadn't got the ticket.
Oh no.
On the morning of the game, his girlfriend had phoned the hotel to say, well, she had been in touch with the post office in Hamburg. They'd managed to track the ticket on the day of the game, but it was in Hamburg. They got it to her. She contacted Lufthansa to say, can you help me? Which they were extremely sympathetic. You know, this was the opening game of the World Cup. So they allowed her to go through to Lufthansa. They gave her a boarding pass to go through security, to pick somebody that looked sensible, trustworthy. She explained the situation, gave the ticket to the person, along with a photograph of Dougie from my wedding in his kilt, to take through to Paris. So the photograph, the ticket, that get taken through. The only thing was Dougie had to go to the airport, so we weren't together before the game.
But he got the ticket.
He got the ticket,
yeah.
He had to go through it and he got the game. Although I felt bad that when I went to the stadium, saw Dougie, you know, in his seat, I'd forgotten about him. I'd been having such a good time in the bars. I'd forgotten that he'd been away to the airport.
Jim Holland chatting to me earlier. Let's hope if Scotland and Jim are heading to the World Cup next summer, it's a little bit smoother than back in 1998. Right, let's see how the weather is looking. Christopher is here. How's it going to be for the football tomorrow, Crucial?
Cold.
I'm going to get cold. I remember you saying it was going to be cold, so wrap up. Big jackets if you're going to
all
Hampton.
the layers,
yeah.
Hat, scarf, gloves, big coat.
3 pairs of socks.
Probably. It was cold today as well. Lovely pictures, though, from our weather watchers with that crisp sunshine. A frozen pond there in Victoria Park. The ducks probably not enjoying that too much. With their cold feet and showers and cloud around the west coast. But for many, it was bright and sunny and certainly chilly, and that cold weather sticking with us. Let me show you what's happening tomorrow, because we've got a little troublemaker in the forecast. This little feature here is going to work its way across the country, mix with the cold air and bring a spell of rain, sleet and for some, snow. So this is the picture tomorrow. We've got a Met Office yellow warning for the risk of snow for areas really north of Perth and inland. Snow falling down to around 150 metres. Through central and southern Scotland, it's ice that is our primary concern, with some snow showers in the mix, but the snow really confined to higher ground. So this is what's happening through the day tomorrow. This band of rain moving in, falling as sleet and snow as it engages with the cold air. So at mid-morning, you can see for many central parts of the country, it's cloudy and wet, cold. Across the southern uplands, some snow. Further north, some snow, certainly if you're driving up and down the A9, for example. Towards the west coast and through the Hebrides, outbreaks of rain, perhaps a bit of sleet mixed in. Same too across Orkney and Shetland. And the winds coming in from the north, just adding to that cold feel. Through the course of the day tomorrow, drying up through the central belt and the south for a time, but cloudy. Early sunshine in the northeast, replaced by cloud, and that snow continuing to fall across parts of the Highlands. Temperatures on the thermometer, 3 to 7 Celsius, but feeling cold under the cloud. And if you catch any of that rain or snow. And actually, tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, we've got this area of rain, sleet, snow working southwards, cold air tucking in underneath. So we could see some snow down to lower levels. It's one to watch. And then through Tuesday night, all day Wednesday and Thursday, it's a strict north wind, and that will feed in frequent snow showers to sea level around northern and eastern coastal areas. Through much of the central lowlands in the south, bright blue sky and sunshine, crystal clear, but really cold. 4 degrees at best if you're in any semblance of a breeze, feeling really chilly. Those showers still with us on Thursday, mainly affecting eastern parts. Elsewhere, once again, it's a cold but bright sunny day. Temperatures on the thermometer at best around 3 or 4 Celsius, but certainly for many, colder than that. That's the forecast for now.
It's funny how just seeing the snow symbols, I just instantly felt cold, Christopher, watching that.
What can you do? I mean, it's the end of November.
It certainly is. Big jackets required. Thanks very much. And thanks to you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with a special programme ahead of Scotland's World Cup qualifier. Good night.